representing the Conservation District. I'm here on behalf of soil advocacy and climate solutions education. That's what I do. In my retirement, I chose to teach regular people about the importance of soil, and forests are a huge part of that factor. They are these intact forests. We're also going to hear from Mike Chapman a little bit, right after the film, and Elizabeth and I are amongst a few of us that are some of the original members of the Elwell Legacy Forest Coalition. Can I have our other originals or current members stand up for us? Just show what a little tiny group. We're a little group, but we're mighty, and we need help. So that being said, I'll turn it over to Elizabeth.
Okay, I'm just going to give a quick introduction. I'm Elizabeth Dunn. I live here in Port Angeles in Lower Elwha Territory, and I just want to acknowledge that we are on Lower Elwha Territory today and give thanks to the Lower Elwha tribe for all they have done and their partners to restore the river and watershed. And we see ourselves as continuing that work to ensure that the watershed it continues to restore itself and thrive. And so I also have another hat. I work for a nonprofit called the Earth Law Center, and I got involved in this issue really because my love of these forests and this place. About 2 years ago, I found out I was actually at the Board of Natural Resources building in Olympia at a rally, at a gathering of folks who are supporting the protection of these mature, structurally complex forests. We are really part of the movement that's been growing over the last few years, recognizing that these types of forests are unique and special and that they are essential for mitigating climate change and preserving biodiversity. So that movement has been growing. At that rally, I learned that the Board of Natural Resources was slated that day to approve a timber sale called Aldwell in the Elwha River watershed. And I was pretty outraged by that news, thinking, how could this possibly be? And I actually realized that our city manager, Nathan West, had already submitted a comment expressing concerns to DNR about this very sale, but had not been heard. And so after giving comment that day, seeing the sale get approved, we held a community walk, a community hike in October, so a month after that, to show people what we'd be losing with this forest.
That's 2022, by the way.
That was in 2022, October 2022, and that is really, I think, the birth of what is the Elwha Legacy Forest Coalition, which is a coalition of members who care, who are actively involved in protecting these forests. People going out, doing surveys on the ground, taking photographs, handing out flyers, raising awareness about what is happening in our watershed, because a lot of people didn't know. So it's actually been going on quite some time, and it's hard to actually find out where these timber sales are happening until it's already too late, right? And so a lot of this work is peeling back those layers and showing what is happening and then what we can do about it. And so, unfortunately, Aldwell Forest is logged, as you'll see in this film what happened there. But we carried on, and as this coalition grew, we vowed that we would protect the next forest on the chopping block, which was the power plant forest, which was canceled. And that was an effort by a large collection of folks, and we filed a lawsuit against that timber sale, along with the Center for Well Research. And it was, I think we all are celebrating that. So I'm not going to say too much more because a lot of that's covered in the short film. It's only 22 minutes. I don't know if some folks probably already seen it. Has anyone in there?
How many people have seen the film?
Seen it?
Okay, not that many.
Oh, good. Okay.
Could I get someone to, when it's time to hit that light switch on the right?
Wait, let me just say something.
Wait, just the one on the right.
Just canceling the sale doesn't protect it. So, in Jefferson County, we have proper sorts.
Yes.
And we got an injunction against that. So what happened before that was so we had, I forget what the parcel was, but it was slated to be cut. Before we could get the courts to act, they cut it. So the courts had no effect. So then Crocker Sorts came up, and we got an injunction to protect it, and we were going to uphold that injunction, and she had pulled the sale, And so the lawyers went and said, oh, well, there's nothing to see here, it's not on the sale list. And so the judge rescinded the order, and now it's been relisted for sale. So
Yeah.
don't take
Thank
anything
you
for
for,
granted.
yes, I'm well aware of that. Thank you for sharing that story. Yes, so, yes, yes, I'm an attorney in the power function. We work closely with the Lake Forest Defense Coalition, talking about keeping crop, and yes, unfortunately, you cannot really rely on the courts to stop these sales before the logging occurs. So that's also covered in the film, but going to the courts is a tool that we need to use, but it's not the only tool, and it's certainly not the end-all be-all solution, because unfortunately, the Department of Natural Resources does things like that. They cancel the sale, then the court says, oh, I guess there's no longer an issue, and then they relist it again. So it's kind of this whole process, and so.
And we're gonna give an update on what's happening currently with all, a big slate of timber sales that were just recently put on the chopping block.
Yes, after this film, we want to give you an update, share information, and then Wendy's gonna.
Okay, and just the switch on the right, please.
Thank you again for coming, and I hope you enjoyed the film.
Is a rich rainforest. It's dripping in precipitation most of the year with huge sword ferns and moss all over the trees.
When I bring people here, I see something click in people's heads that brings joy and understanding. It can't be taught, it's something that has to be felt.
We decided this is where we want to live, this is where we want to die. When you're in it, it's primordial, primeval.
You enter into this magical portal into this world of cedars and firs and salal and huckleberry.
Just the peacefulness, the tranquility, the richness. Whenever I come back home, I just take a deep breath and sigh of relief that I'm back in my place, because it's where I belong, and I want to protect it as much as I can.
Fish from getting upstream, so that was completely blocked for 100 years. So the whole watershed is now coming back to life. Bloodstream of the whole organ that is the biosphere, is the natural wonder that is the Elwha. And so it has to have its nutrients in it. It has to be rich. It has to have the organic matter that it brings in, that the salmon bring in from the ocean. And that does build the entire natural world.
Seeing the dam come down, seeing the salmon return, it's kind of a miracle. It's a historic moment right here, right now, with what's happening in breaching that dam.
What we're dealing with is a death by 1,000 cuts. So 100 acres here, 100 acres there, no big deal. When you start adding these things up and you see unprecedented forest loss. So protecting these blocks of forest is a starting point.
It came to our attention about a year and a half ago that there was going to be some logging occurring very close to the river, over 100 acres. And we tried to stop it. So legacy forest is a forest that was never logged by machine. So it may have been logged by hand equipment back around World War II.
There's nothing wrong with being from the timber community. Everybody needs a job. At what cost? At what cost?
Logging is certainly a part of this community and it's something that is going to continue. So what we're advocating for is not to halt all logging. We are advocating for the protection of these last remaining critical forests in critical locations and that are structurally complex and biodiverse.
The importance of forest on a global scale is through a whole bunch of different benefits. They're life-giving ecosystems. The Pacific Northwest is blessed with some of the most important temperate rainforests on the planet. And not only do they have a lot of those temperate rainforests, but the temperate rainforests we have in this region, and includes the Elwha watershed where we're standing today, are some of the most carbon-dense forests on the planet. And the other value that we get from these temperate rainforests is the amount of carbon that they have accumulated over decades.
The library will close in 15 minutes. Computers will shut off at 5 minutes before close. Please let staff know if you need
The more carbon that's in
assistance.
the forest and not in the atmosphere. So they're excellent natural climate solutions. And the mature and old growth forests do it much better than a log forest and a plantation because they represent the accumulation of carbon in the big trees, in the soils, in the surrounding vegetation over millennia.
It doesn't make sense to essentially clear cut a large tract of forest, literally 200 feet away from where we've invested hundreds of millions of dollars to remove a dam for salmon recovery. We know that forestry practices have an impact in the watershed on the river.
These systems are all connected together. When we start severing the linkages in the food web, the system starts to unravel and collapse. So when you clear cut a rainforest like this, in the Elwha, if it's on steep slopes, a lot of that soil is going to wind up in the creeks, killing salmon. You're going to release most of the carbon that's been stored in these big trees and in the soils to an extent. It's going to wind up in the atmosphere, contributing to the problem rather than the solution. And you're going to destroy a lot of really important wildlife habitat.
The ocean right outside the mouth of the Elwha River is populated by two types of orchids. And it's a sort of a natural laboratory right under our noses. There's nowhere else in the world that we have two completely different types of orchids in a populated area that are here frequently. The Elwha historically grew huge Chinook salmon, sometimes 100-pound Elwha hogs, they used to call them. And those were part of the essential food base for the southern resident orchids. They're down to 74 at the last count. They're severely endangered. They need to have plentiful supplies of salmon year-round. That's what they need, that's what they evolved to depend upon over thousands of years. And only in the last 150 or so years, humans have cut back the number of salmon out there. The population's been decimated. There are reverberating effects. When you tear down the forest on the side of the mountain, then that can impact the water, and that impacts the salmon, and that impacts the orcas.
Began to organize as a community and formed the Elwha Legacy Forest Coalition to raise awareness. We held community walks, we held a rally, we brought together a lot of people in the community. We went to the city council, who sent a letter asking the Department of Natural Resources to pause this harvest, to hear our concerns about the loss of this forest and what it would mean for our community.
It is our responsibility to protect the environment based on treaty obligations between tribes and the federal government. We need to be bold as leaders, and we need to tell DNR what we want our community to look like, not DNR to tell us what they can and can't do.
It's important to City Council that we do everything in our power to protect the watershed. And I can tell you City Council has taken no less than 5 separate unanimous decisions to protect the watershed. It provides the water supply for our entire community and beyond. It provides water for over 20,000 residents. It provides water for over 700 different businesses in our community.
Protected in addition
To come together and stand for what we know is right, to protect the forest, to protect the salmon, not for us, but for the generations to come.
And unfortunately, DNR did not listen. DNR went ahead and proceeded with the sale of this forest and the logging. And honestly, the logging really occurred on an expedited basis, quite likely because of the significant community opposition. We just climbed up the hillside. We're at the edge of the Oswald clear cut, the spot where used to be a incredible forest. And this is the first time I've set foot on this land since it has been decimated by logging practices that do not respect the complex ecosystem that is a forest. The community of trees that live here and the life that is supported. And this is what we have now. Stumps, big splash piles, the homes of all the animals that were here. Destroyed. Moving some of these forests that you have developed an intimate relationship with is like losing a member of a family. It's like losing a close friend. We cannot continue to extract limitlessly responsibility, a moral responsibility, an ethical responsibility to ensure that we are caring for and protecting the earth for this generation and for future generations.
This is our home. What do you do when somebody attacks, is destroying your home?
And so we really then at that point resolved that the next time a forest came up that was gonna be on the chopping block in the Elwell River watershed, we were gonna take every action we possibly could to stop that from we went to court and we did something that doesn't happen very often. We filed a motion to try to stop the auction, to try to stop the sale of the forest to the timber company.
May 2nd, 2020.
We discovered that the Department of Natural Resources had not done its homework, had not done its work. Under the law, it is required to take what's called a hard look at the environmental impacts of a timber harvest. And when we delved into what they had studied, we realized that there were a lot of critical things that they had simply not studied or considered at all. And we asked the court to halt the auction. Unfortunately, the court did not do so, and it's a hard burden to get there. The problem with that is that that means that while our case is going on, the logging could occur. It could start any day.
I want to thank you all for joining us today. It is a very exciting day.
I'm really excited to have Dave Oppengrove at Port Angeles today. As you know, we're trying to the Public Lands Commissioner. Also, I have a big announcement. I just found out.
The library will close in 5 minutes. Please bring all material forward for checkout.
Is canceled. We can give a lot of hope. You know, that when we started this, it seemed like an almost impossible task. And as it kept going further and further and further towards the chopping block, it seemed more impossible at points. But then we continue to have hope that we would reach this day where we can celebrate the protection of this very special place.
This is what we protect. This is what we protect. All those birds and this pristine lands and waters that we live in. This is what we protect.
Our vision is that we will continue to grow this movement of people recognizing that we do have an imbalance with too much extraction and not enough restoration, not enough of a sense of responsibility to the natural world, and that creates an imbalance.
The most important thing about this whole process has been the importance of community advocacy. This isn't just working on the litigation papers, it was working with Earth Law Center, working with the Center for Rural Research, and working with everyone who was involved in the Washington community who wanted to speak on behalf of the Alpha Forest.
So many members of our community have become engaged in this issue and have done all the different parts to make this happen, taking photographs, video, handing out flyers, raising awareness. And we've been speaking at public meetings, I've been litigating, drafting briefs, going to court, making phone calls, and all of that coming together has not only saved this forest and gotten it off the chopping block, but it's brought us together closer as a community to grow our community of people who care about these forests and care about the river.
I think our responsibility as humans is to first develop a spiritual respect and appreciation and really a reverence for the forest, for the mountainside, for the natural processes, all the wonders that we behold out here. We need to really step back and view that as sacred. Once we can make that shift, then the policies will follow, the practices, the activities will follow to take care of it, to live with it. And we need to appreciate nature as much as we appreciate ourselves.
The library is now closed and will reopen tomorrow at 10 a.m. Have a nice evening.
Kind of long credits. So.
Yeah.
Stop the credits. I hope you enjoyed the film. You can also watch it on YouTube on the Earth Listeners YouTube channel and share it. The whole point of it is to really get the information out there and, you know, educate folks about what's going on and inspire and bring people together. I didn't ever think we'd actually make a film about this. The whole reason we were doing it was to just, you know, continue our campaign to put pressure, and we didn't know what was going to happen in the midst of filming. Ellen is actually the one that broke the news to me that the sale had been canceled because we heard it as I was driving over to the fundraiser for Save Off the Grove. So it's not like a little bit of a reality TV show, but we're proud that it's won 3 Best Short Film Awards, which is cool, and also not what we were really expecting. But I guess moving on to the next chapter of what is going on now, we have this map up here, and you know, unfortunately, we have found out that there are actually 11 older structurally complex forest timber sales on the agenda, the Board of Natural Resources, on November 5th. And so of those 11, there are 3 in the Ella River watershed, and there's one that we, you know, according to DNR's documents, would be up in December, and totaling 555 acres, the majority of which are these older structurally complex forests in some pretty critical locations. We've had a geologist look at the slopes and flag some slope stability issues, and Winnie's going to talk a little more on the science on the hydrology, but we have, can I? Sure. Oh, yeah. Okay. So yeah, we have Matt Rosner here, hydrologist, who grateful for his expert opinion and expertise on this in reviewing these timber sales and providing statements to us and declarations that we've submitted to the Board of Natural Resources explaining to them the, very real, the potential impacts of this logging on stream flows. And so we also have, comments by other hydrologists, folks that have done studies in the Nooksack watershed, that have shown proven a reduction in stream flows as a result of clear cutting these older forests and planting with younger forests. And so, so this map might be a little hard to see. I want to say that a lot of this information is also on the coalition website, ollegacyforest.org. So you can see on there each timber sale, photos of it, information. I'm going to give a shout out to Scott McGee and his wife Carolita, who are not here tonight, but totally volunteer. They have made this website and taken photos. So this
blue line is the outline of the Elbow watershed. Can everyone see that? Do we need to dim the lights?
Okay.
Yeah,
So you
the
can
blue,
see
the blue line,
watershed.
there you go.
Yeah.
Over here is the Little River Trail. How many of you hiked the Little River Trail? I was there yesterday. These two parcels, as you can see, there's the trailhead, are right on the trail. Their plan is to clear cut that section of forest that leads us right into the Olympic National Park. And we all know we can see the river from there. We've heard the clear cut from above and are still looking at those bare hills just above, the trailhead. So,
yeah, there's a massive harvest there a few years prior to this. So just showing too, the cumulative impacts of this logging in the watershed, right? And DNR often says, it's just one sale, it's just 100 acres. But you can see these patches of the cumulative impacts.
just like Dominic De La Salle referred to, we have to start somewhere. And there's so little left. So these other, Becky was gonna speak to, what is it, Dry Hill? Where is that on this map?
On this specific map, I have this as a look here. But did we mention that little, just for anybody that's not from around here, that Little River is a tributary of the Elwha?
Yeah, everyone here has hiked, everyone's hand went up when I asked who's hiked the Little River. So they
Just
do,
wanted to be
yeah.
sure, I don't know. So, just trying to, we have Granny's Cafes over here.
Right.
We have 101. And we have the Lower Elwha Food and Fuel, the gas station everybody goes to, right? The busiest gas station in town. This is one of the cuts over here, and this is where Dry Hill is. So if anybody's familiar with mountain bikers or the trails over there, if you go down Walkabout Way, that little tiny dirt road that's not very marked, it's not marked, it's right across from the gas station. You go up that little dirt road and you come to, you'll see a yellow gate on the right-hand side where you'll see some.
Isn't that where they have the mountain bike race?
Yeah, okay, mountain bike races, but you have to, you park there and you walk up that logging type road or that road, and you'll see where the staging area is for the mountain bike races. But that's Dry Hill, it's a huge area, and that's where one of the cuts is, that pink shaded area.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, and is there a cut near the foothills? I mean, I know the foothills have had a lot of cuts, but that's over near where Little River Trail is, would be past.
Most of these legacy forests, if you want to turn the light back on, are impassable. When we hike these forests to survey them, Peter goes out on the surveys, I've been up to Alley Cat. These forests are so dense and deep that Joni and I and her husband and my old dog almost couldn't do it. They're so steep, the forest floor is so deep, the nurse logs, the vegetation and the biodiversity is so dense. Aldwell was one of the few legacy forests that had trails that you could actually walk in. Little River is another example of that, but many of these forests are not even hikeable unless you're really an incredible bushwhacker.
I did want to point out, I was going to point out the other couple sales, but
I just wanted to give some follow-up about Aldwell. I live within a mile of Aldwell, and this summer, I ride my bike up Little River Road a lot. What Aldwell stand is now is a forest of Canadian thistle.
Thistle, that's all.
And bull thistle. And there is a palpable difference in the temperature. There's a most notable in the summertime, but there, I mean, I didn't have any way to measure it.
Yeah.
But, riding along that road, in the shadow of the clear cut, compared to just a little further up the road where the trees are still are. So they can't say that the clear cut that's going to border both sides of the little river isn't going to affect the not only just the ecosystem in terms of the soil and the beings that live there and the, you know, the natural flow of interactions and all, we can't even begin to imagine, but the temperature rise, or it's got to impact.
And that point about the thistle, we did a ceremony at the Aldwell a year after, and the only thing that is growing there amidst these piles of slash and the stumps are thistle. And that's partly because thistle is a weed that breaks up compaction. It's an invasive species. And so what happens is the DNR then has to come in before they can plant their little trees that they grew in the nursery of Doug fir. They have to come in and they have to spray Roundup to kill all those thistles, which also sterilizes through the soil and kills the biology. We'll get into that later. But it's these practices that create the ongoing cumulative cascading problems.
And Aldwell is such a rich, diverse, I mean, like, I got chanterelles there and lobster mushrooms, and it was just such a, yeah.
So do you want
I was gonna point out the other quick one, so this timber sale is called Alley Cat, and the names don't really matter too much, but just so you can see what they are, you can see that this is Ella River, so how close that is. And then you can see over here, this is another one that is slated to be on the December agenda called Bread and Butter, so large patches of these last remaining structure complex forests in the watershed that are doing a lot for us. When I spoke with Oliver Graw, who did the study in the NUSAC, he said, you know, you don't know where the tipping point, like this could be at the tipping point, right? Even though there's like, they've already gotten rid of a lot of these older forests, like you might be at the tipping point with leaving, you know, with getting rid of these. And we know that they have these very real impacts that, you know, that we experience.
Matt, do you have anything to add?
Yeah.
I guess just in terms of the water budget for the watershed. Sorry.
That's
I
our
know you guys are doing this tonight. Let's hear Elizabeth's voice.
Thank you for coming by.
Like Elizabeth said, I share the declarations, support this effort, which I think is great, all the work you guys are doing. Mainly having to do with the water availability, because there are some issues. I know the city has some concerns about public water supply from the Elwha River. So we do know that over time that, you know, the glaciers are projected to be gone in some of our lifetimes, and that's, from what I understand, about 10% of the stream flow in the summer in the Elwha River. So there's already that, and there's been some issues with the river kind of channel moving around. That affects kind of the output of the rain well the city depends on. So I kind of feel like, based on, you know, all these other factors, that, you know, the logging that's proposed, even it might be just a little bit of flow reduction, summertime flow reduction, you know, as a result of those timber operations, if they do happen, they all add up. You know, it's a cumulative effects kind of thing, where you've got the glaciers, you've got the river moving around, the well already kind of being stressed from that, and potentially we'll definitely, you know, losing glaciers within our lifetime, and then who knows what's going to happen with the snowpack. You know, we look at our water budget to get our precipitation in the form of rain and snow. With the warming climate, we're going to see more rain, less snow, is what we're going to see. And, you know, that snowpack is a reservoir for us that supports that late summer runoff or river flow. So I think it's important, you know, especially with all the restoration work that's gone on in this river basin. Basically, it's, you know, we all know it because we live here, but there, as a profession that works in this field, you know, in Hawaii and other states, there's eyes on this area from around the world, really looking at this, the Elwha River and what's been happening. And I think it's important to, you know, keep the momentum going. And there's some real positive signs in terms of how the ecosystem is responding, but hold the line, basically, and keep working on this.
Thanks, Matt.
To emphasize her point on that temperature, people might think that's not a big deal. I used to live in the Mojave Desert, and there was a big cottonwood tree that had a sewer made, and it pumped so much water in the air that people were going on, we would go on these 30-mile bike rides, and it was on the end, and you would get 200 feet of 20-degree temperature drop if the wind was blowing, it was upwind on that. And so you could see everybody would just stop pedaling, coast through there, and that was just one tree, somebody went out and measured it, and it's a 20-degree drop.
Wow.
So people might think that is, yeah, but it's a huge deal. These trees are massive pumps, and, so.
We're gonna talk a lot about that in my little thing.
I wanted to give just another quick thank you to Matt, because as an expert and a hydrologist, he's volunteered his time to review these timber sales, because we are, not big corporations, we don't have massive budgets, so we rely on volunteers and folks like Matt, so great.
And we also wanted to introduce John Gusman. Would you please stand up?
Sorry.
John Gusman is in the credits. He's the big officer.
John had a lot of studies in the film, and I'm grateful for that. So now, I think before you do your presentation, and of course, obviously, we've acknowledged Representative Chapman's here, and has been a huge ally for us in this, all along the way in the power plant timber sale, and working alongside us to stop that. So I heard you had some announcements or some information to share, and love for you to come up. And
Maybe you want to lead with the ELWA petition and what's going on?
Yeah, I can explain that really quickly. So we had a recent development with our efforts. We have two actions going on. We have an action alert that went out through the Center for Responsible Forestry, and also on the Elwha Legacy Forest list. If you're not on our list, you can sign up. That basically sends emails to the Commissioner of Public Lands and to the members of the Boards of Natural Resources, and tells them that, hey, we're concerned about this, we want you to pull these sales. And it takes 2 minutes, and you can send that. We have about 5,000 letters that have been sent through that portal so far. And then we've also been supporting an effort by Lower Elwha Column citizens. They have a petition, which you can read over there, asking people to sign on in solidarity in support of stopping these timber sales and looking at the way that we manage the watershed in a different way, because it's not working the way this is occurring. And so we want to support that effort and stand with them. We have, so far, they've got almost 200 actual physical signatures of Lower Elwha tribal members, and online there's a QR code. You can also sign that one here in person or online, and we have just in literally posting it in 2 days, we have 800 signatures in support. So that's a tremendous effort. I'm grateful to be able to support that and work alongside members of the Lower Elwha tribe in that. So that.
Well, this is Mike Chapman. Does anybody not know who he is?
Well, been inundated with my picture.
Did anybody not vote for him?
Two things I do want to point out before I forget is I hope you all have had a chance. Does everybody know who Bill Bradley is? The senator, presidential candidate, Final Four basketball player, world champion, New York Knicks. Has everybody seen the one-man play that he does of his life?
No.
So it's on YouTube now. It's called Rolling Along. It's not something I would normally watch as a one-man play about somebody's life. It seems kind of arrogant and all that. But I will say this. The man was Princeton grad, Final Four basketball player, won a world championship with the Knicks, longtime U.S. senator, presidential candidate. And he's had an amazing life, right? 1 hour to tell his life story, and he dedicates 3 minutes to the Elwha watershed. And when I saw that, it changed my whole life and approach about Elwha. Now, it's 5 days before an election, and if you were here, normally you would hear politicians stand in front of you telling you all the great things they do and why they're great. I'm here to apologize and tell you that I failed, because I took the word of another elected official, current Commissioner of Public Lands, Hillary Franz, and she's broken that word to me, and I failed in not verifying and getting the funding secured last session. Now, I'm one of 148, so I didn't completely fail on my own, but I shouldn't have trusted her word. And she's now broken that word to me and to the community. And I had a very frank conversation with her yesterday, and full disclosure, toward the end of the conversation, she told me that I was yelling at her. I was not yelling, but I was very frustrated. And all I've asked her, she's a lame duck. She's leaving office. She's moving legacy forest sales forward on election day. Now, just as a student of government, 16 years as a county commissioner, there are just certain things you don't do in government. We used to say at the county, we're not gonna do any business between Christmas and New Year's. There are times where the public needs to do they need to vote Tuesday. They don't need to worry about a sale. There's 2 other meetings after election day. So I asked her just, would you just wait? She is not waiting. So we're working hard. We need 3 votes out of the 6-person board to just pause these sales out of, number one, a good government. And I talked with the representative of the governor's office today. I talked with Chris Rectal. The governor is very involved. We're starting, this is a good government. You don't do this on election day. Second, all I've asked her was, let the new commissioner come in and take another look. We don't know what would be. We all, assuming everybody's probably hoping voted for Dave Updegrove. He has my full support. I've done everything I can to support him after the primary. But we don't know. We don't know. But at least let the next commissioner, I asked her that. She is intractable. That's wrong. But it's my fault, because I took her word initially. Now, we've done amazing things, and if the Climate Commitment Act stays, we have $50 million already set aside to buy acreage for the Quinault tribe. $50 million of timberland that's in private timberland landholding on their reservation. If the Climate Commitment Act stays in place, there's a lot of things we can do, and I pledge that I won't be here in a year saying I failed you. We will make sure we can secure these forests. We can make the junior taxing districts whole. We need to work to a unitary trust so we're not pitting junior taxing districts against junior tax. So the unitary trust of DNR, so that it's managed for the greater good of the entire state. And with the Climate Commitment Act, and I'm talking with environmental leaders and to build a coalition so that we can make this right. And that's all I'm asking. And that's all I was asking. Really was all I was asking Commissioner France. Can you just give me a little time? If I were to win, this is what I want to work on. You're not going to be there, and we don't know what the new commissioner. So that seems like a reasonable request. And if I had been in her shoes, I would have thought, I don't need to do this right now. But I think there's something else involved. And then finally, a lot of this. And I guess, full disclosure, I've had a hell of a political journey, and a lot of you, Tim, know, you've been around long enough, and Ron, and again, they wouldn't tell you in political science class to say this 5 days before the election, but, I started my political journey opposing taking out the dams of the Elbow watershed. I started my wife's grandfather's memorialized in the Forks Loggers Hall of Fame, and you only get memorialized out there if you've lost your life in the logging industry. My wife's family is a long-time logging family from out here. And so, I've had a transition, but this specific area is so important, and I just want some time to see what we can do in the legislature. And then finally, when you talk about the timber issues, and I don't know about you, but there is something fatiguing about this, pitting the environment against jobs. And Lord knows I've worked to make sure we have a healthy economy out here. That's so important. It's important for our tax base. It's important for our schools. It's important for everything that makes living out here. Every 2 to 6 weeks, about every 6 weeks, if you look at the Port of Port Angeles, you'll see a massive amount of timber leave the peninsula.
How can you miss it?
What?
You can't miss it.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying. That timber is coming off private timberlands. It goes overseas, and gosh, only know that generally it comes back here as crates. A lot of it comes back as crates from stuff that Walmart sells, it's cement forms, and some of it goes to Japan for housing. And we do charge a timber tax in this state. And one thing that I'm talking to, and I'd love your input, I'd love your support, I'd love to introduce the bill. I'd love to give, if a timber company harvests and chooses not to ship that wood overseas, but to sell it into a local mill, I'd like to figure out a way to cut their timber tax. They'll pay the full amount. If they ship it overseas, they get a tax break locally if it goes to a local mill. Because what we're pitting legacy forest to the mill worker they need to make $60,000 a year to pay for their family and healthcare and those sorts of things. We're pitting winners and losers while we're letting large corporations just ship jobs overseas. So that's one of the ideas. The other idea again is this unitary trust, kind of the greater good. And then finally, I think we've got to figure out a way. So like Crescent School District, really upset. They really want these sales to move forward. They need a new boiler. They need a new roof. I've been out there. They have a long list of capital needs. It's just wrong that we don't have a fund where they can apply. So they shouldn't be weighing in on a forest, legacy forest. We shouldn't put them in. That's the failure, right? That's the failure. And that's what I'm taking response. It's not right that Dave Bingham, who's the superintendent of a small school district. It's not right that he has tears in his eyes and said, I don't want to be in this position. I want to just fix my school so I can educate my kids. That's probably more than anything what has torn me up inside as a failure on my end. But I think, you know my heart, and this isn't political tonight, this is just me, and then finally, I know Ellen was there, and who all was there at the Port Angeles Business Association debate? You were there, you were there, right? Yeah. A few others. And we got asked about the LWA. And I think this is a direct quote. It said, I'm staking my political future. I'm willing to risk my political future to save the LWA. And I think that was actually reported in the paper. I'm using that political capital, and I used that today with the governor's office. Here's a rural legislator. I don't want to win Tuesday if it means we lose the LWA. I can't do the job. That is too important. So this isn't even political for me. So my son asked me, where are you going tonight, Dad? I said, I'm going to save the LWA forest and our drinking water and our future. So that's all I want to say. And it's probably more than I should have said.
Thank you, Steve.
Did you happen to know if Commissioner Franz is going to be around on November 1st on Friday? Because I forgot to mention that that's the day. At noon, we'll be there delivering this petition. A whole lot of citizens from Lower Ellawah Clown Tribe and others are being called in to stand in solidarity that day. So I don't know if she'll be around that day, but we'll be going to her offices and to hand deliver it to the other members of the Board of Natural Resources, asking them to pause these sales. And whatever happens on November 5th, it's not over. We'll keep going because we'll, as the speech today, we'll file a lawsuit again. That might not going to be a surprise to anybody. And I think other groups are going to file lawsuits, and the sales can still be canceled. So we're not giving up hope.
So now for a little bit of education. Some of you may know a lot of this stuff. One of the things that I think is a little bit mysterious to us is the water cycle. So I do have a really cool 3-minute video from Jimmy Einstein. It's just really cool. But this first slide is, I'm pretty sure this is the Aldwell on the left. And on the right is a plantation forest about a week before harvest. And I just wanted people to just take a look, because a picture is worth 1,000 words. This is a forest that's just about ready, and they're just going to harvest it. And you can see that the trees are definitely skinny and small, and the biodiversity is not nearly as much. And I always like to start with that slide, because we're not against plantation forests. We have plenty of plantation forests to continue to subsidize, set these older, mature, incredible climate solutions aside, and log these other forests. And, there's so many in the portfolio of the DNR, and we do not need, to add any more to that. So here's my favorite little video on, what do you call it? The water cycle.
When we think about climate change, we tend to think about carbon dioxide in the atmosphere warming the planet. Carbon is so central to our thinking about the climate that many other important aspects are excluded from the conversation. One of these things is water. Water is actually the dominant greenhouse gas, but its global effects are difficult to measure because it doesn't spread out evenly in the atmosphere like carbon does. Its effect on temperature also depends on the many forms it takes. When it takes the form of a haze, it has a warming effect. When it takes the form of clouds, it has a cooling effect, except for at night, in which it has a subtle warming effect. Since atmospheric water is hard to model, it tends to get ignored. But temperature is not the only important aspect of the climate here. If the climate can be warm or cold, the climate can also be wet or dry. The rampant rise of floods and droughts of our time are said to be caused by climate change, but really they are climate change. While temperature does have some effect on rainfall, floods and droughts are primarily caused by disruptions to the hydrological cycle. We tend to think of the water cycle this way. Rain falls, water evaporates, condenses into clouds, and repeats. But this is only part of the picture, since a lot more happens underground. Healthy soil looks like a sponge that soaks up a lot of water. Some of it is taken up and stored by plants, and some of it percolates deep down into aquifers. This groundwater wells up and feeds springs and streams, which allows even more life to thrive. There's then much more water to evaporate from the saturated ground or to transpire through plants. This abundance of water vapor allows for more consistent rainfall. So what happens if we cut down the forest, plow the grasslands, and expose the soil? Without trees or plants to buffer the rain, the heavy downpour compacts the soil. The water can't soak down into the compacted ground, so almost all of it stays above ground when you have a flood. Almost all this water runs off, carrying loads of topsoil with it. And when the rain stops, the little water there is left evaporates very quickly, leaving the ground compact and dry. This lack of percolation depletes the groundwater over time, so it can't feed the streams, which dry up. Now there's no water in the land to feed rain clouds when we have a drought. If a rainstorm does come, it just creates another flood and worsens the subsequent drought. Instead of consistent rainfall, we have a flood-drought cycle. Fortunately, it is possible to reverse this trend. There are ways to regenerate ecosystems and restore the water cycle pretty rapidly, while feeding people in the process. Making subtle changes to the land's topography can slow the flow of water, allowing more of it to soak into the ground and be used by plants. Plants with deep roots help break up the compacted soil, allowing water to percolate deeper. Everyone has a place in reversing the climate crisis. Whether you're working to protect healthy ecosystems, regenerate damaged ones, or just helping yourself or your neighbor depend a little less on industrial agriculture, you are helping the earth heal.
Thanks. I'm a huge fan of this guy. He's got great videos. So back to our little slideshow. You can turn a light on if you want, maybe the backlight. Does everyone feel like they know what a legacy forest is now? We've talked a lot about it, so we'll just skip past this. I'd say the main component is most of these forests have not been sprayed and then bombed with nitrogen in literally by planes that they would use for fires. So when the soil is, they've also been naturally regenerated. They were planted in rows, and they are entering the peak of their carbon water storage. And they are our future old growth. We measured a lot of the trees at the Aldwell, and we stood up there with signs and took pictures on stumps, and they were 162 years old, 127 years old. You know, they're just not that far away from old growth. And the DNR does have a mandate, and it's just been recently that, I'm going to skip down to the bottom, it's generally meant that they have to log for the most revenue. But in 2022, there was a state Supreme Court ruling that found that the DNR is under no obligation to maximize revenues from logging and has a myriad of ways it can create benefits for all the people. And that's what I'm hoping will really begin to happen with this new lands commissioner. This is the aerial view like you saw of the Aldwell. It took 3 machines to take down 200 acres. It was 200 acres, and we asked for 97 acres to be put into conservation, and for them to go ahead and log the other, and they did it all. And they did it in the middle of winter, because we were rallying, because we were gaining momentum. They logged this forest so quickly, and this is just a little live version of before and after. And the little river is right below that. You can see that so clearly if you ride your bike or drive down the Little River Road. So wildfire resilience is a huge part of what legacy forests have. We've all walked through one of these forests. They're moist, they're damp. All of that decomposing wood is a sponge. It holds moisture. These trees hold moisture, and science has been studying this for so long, that structurally complex forests, and fire is a natural occurrence. So, you know, they are more resistant to wildfire, and it only pays to keep them around, to stop that flow of all the plantation forests from just catching fire. So in 2020, they found that, you know, of course, the wind and terrain and humidity, you know, play a huge role, but fuels. Industrial forests that are clear-cut and replanted, primarily for timber production, they burn much more severely than their older and taller counterparts. We had more fires out here this summer than we've ever had on the West End. This is all the more reason to keep our last remaining, and there's not very many. It's 3% of what was just 2 years ago, 7%. That's how fast they are cutting these older mature forests down. It's really accelerating.
Is there a reason that they're doing a legacy? Is it just a profit?
Yeah,
margin?
those trees are worth a lot of money. I have a graph at the very end that shows the by county, the timber sales for 2022 and 2023. And at the very end, I'll show you that, I'll leave it up. But in 2022, Clallam County made $5.6 million in timber sales. And in 2023, when we were pausing all these forests, we were causing all this havoc, they still took in 11 million. They literally doubled it in the time that they're saying we were causing such a hardship. So, you know, Dominic De La Sala pointed out that we are a part of the largest temperate rainforest in the world. This rainforest that extends from Northern California all the way up to Alaska sequesters more carbon than the Amazon. Carbon is directly linked to water. They generally follow each other. So, you know, our part, and you can see the blue, that's the highest carbon per acre, is right where we are. So Centrifor is a timber industry trade association that worked through the University of Washington School of Environmental Science, and they put out a study that was in 2020 put into the, I would call it the gospel of the DNR protocol. And they asserted that stuff like the wood in our wood products, that's what's sequestering the carbon. We're sequestering carbon by furniture and whatever we make out of wood products. And that's the carbon sequestration. It turns out that's 5% of a tree. And they're not taking any account into the soil. So much of the carbon in our environment, there's X amount of carbon in the whole planet, the atmosphere, the biosphere, and the oceans. And it used to be, before we started pumping carbon out of the earth, most of it was in the earth. And so we pushed it all into the air, and today, you can see by this is the EPA, and this is from 2019, that soil is the prevailing portion of where carbon resides. But what happens when we destroy this soil food web? The soil food web is also considered the soil sponge. You know when you walk in a forest or you walk in really nice soil and it kind of gives and it's really, moist, and there's, this feeling and a smell to it. That's the biology in the soil. This is basically the universe that's living below our feet. And the first time I went on this all-well hike with my soon-to-be new friends, I was out there and Lindsay Warwin was identifying trees, and I just had this moment where I couldn't stop. And I said, you guys don't realize what's happening under your feet. What's so important here is below the ground. Without this soil food web, when we damage this universe below our feet through compaction and chemicals, we eliminate and really compromise that soil's ability to infiltrate water and carbon. They are directly linked. Carbon and water tend to move in tandem. In a healthy soil system, they're following each other into the ground. In a dysfunctional system, they're moving up into the atmosphere. Mycorrhizal fungi are an amazing type of fungi. Fungi is really what regulates moisture in the soil. It also, I don't know how many of you knew this, but plants, trees, all plants can't uptake nutrients from the soil on their own. They have to have this. Without this biology in the soil, a plant cannot take up nutrients. That's why we have synthetic nitrogen, which absolutely destroys the soil food web, kills the biology, basically sterilizes the soil, and most of it runs off, creating like the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, the big algae bloom that you'll see on Lake Leland. That's all excess nitrogen running off because of erosion on compacted soil. So not only do the nutrients, but they mentioned it, nutrients and pollution go on. So does anybody know what a soil aggregate is? Fortunately, I have a picture. Soil aggregate is what makes that soil look like it's cheesy, cottage cheesy, and it's got holes. It's the spaces, the particles different sized particles that create spaces, which are only making it available for water, for fungi, for everything to move and live. So think of this as an apartment building. And think of this as an apartment building that's been demolished. It's really technically the same composition chemically, right? The same ingredients. There's just no pipes to carry the water. There's no electrical system. There's no elevators. There's no possibility for movement. So soil that has been tilled and compacted and degraded no longer has the ability to infiltrate not only water, but life. Does that make sense? Any questions? Forest carbon in the soil is lost after harvest, along with water infiltration and storage capacity. When we destroy the soil sponge, so here's aggregated soil and here's compacted soil. What do we think, what happens? Flood drought, erosion, runoff, no groundwater recharge. So what grows in this is exactly what you and I saw on the Aldwell, thistles, nothing but thistles. Whenever you look along the sides of our roads, because when we build the road, we create extreme compaction, even along the edges. That's why we see so many thistles and blackberry and Himalayan blackberries. Those plants are absolutely designed to break down, along with dandelions that you'll find in your front yard, to break down compaction. The number one thing beyond any root that changes compaction and improves soil health is mycorrhizal fungi. I learned all the measurements when I went to my Soil Health Academy, and it's like pounds per pressure, but it was incredible. It was 5 times the amount of what any root can do. An invisible mycorrhizal fungi changes soil compaction, but guess what? It can't happen without a plant. These are symbiotic relationships. The mycorrhizal fungi makes all the nutrients available to the plants and feeds all that biology. So what happens when soil organic matter changes? Well, first of all, soil organic matter is all of those creatures, all of the debris anything that's alive or decomposing that is in a healthy soil system, in any stage of the decomposition, that's soil organic matter. So your compost is soil organic matter. When a forest drops its leaves, it increases the soil organic matter. It's mulching itself. These forests do not need fertilizer. They don't need to be watered. They are what we call a closed loop system. They are naturally regenerating. They've never seen a forest that needs nitrogen. They have never seen a forest that needs phosphorus. None of that occurs because the biology is intact. So I came to forest conservation through soil biology because it is so heavily linked. When you break down one ecosystem, like Dominic De La Salle mentioned, it's a cascading effect and you're going to break down the other systems. So 1% increase in soil organic matter.
I hate to interrupt you, but I just want to pass around our newsletter email list right now for
Great.
people to sign and fill out, just in case anyone has to leave early or something
Okay.
like that.
Sure thing.
Because it's so important if you're not on our newsletter list that you get on it so you can stay informed and you can pass on, forward it to your friends, because we really want to grow our coalition. And we want more and more volunteers because you can tell we're a small group.
Yeah.
So the more people we get, the better, and especially in these last couple of months, with these sales coming up, we need everyone's help. We need your email if you're not on our list.
And none of us come with any extraordinary skill set. We're all just regular people.
We are. I'm a teacher.
With a different look. She's a teacher.
We all have lives and we're just
We
busy.
all
We
just
just try to
regular
contribute what
folks.
we can. But your help, whatever you can do, whatever it is, just even if it's forwarding our newsletter on to a friend, is gonna help us. So, thank you.
So, and a 1% increase, and that's what the regenerative agriculture community measures. When you get a soil test done, you measure your soil organic matter. It's a standard test. Increases the water storing capabilities in that soil by 5 times. So every time you put a layer of compost on your garden, you're increasing that garden's water holding capabilities. Imagine when we regenerate and restore these forests, when we allow them to continue to regenerate themselves, and we stop using the chemicals on them. This is just a chart. This is another EPA thing done, what year? 2019, to help you understand. 5% goes into wood products, 6% in litter, 5% in deadwood, branches, trees, and the understory, 26%. About half of the carbon is in the soil, and that's what a healthy soil system allows that water infiltration to restore our groundwater, which is so essential. Groundwater infiltration, it's not how much rain we get, it's what we call effective rainfall. Ineffective rainfall is with the drought flood cycle, right? Compaction and stuff. If anybody is interested, this is the best book. It's from 2015. It's called Water in Plain Sight by Dr. Judith Schwartz. And I'm going to read a little part of it, but I need the light on. Bill Mollison, the biologist and the teacher considered the father of permaculture, he has a series of videos, and he says that a tree is 93 to 98% water. A tree stands there as a barrel of water. He says it likens a forest to kind of a lake. To fully wet a tree, a rain shower may have to cover 40 acres worth of leaf, he says. Most precipitation is intercepted by the trees, which redirect the flow of rain. This redistributes the water very differently from if it fell on a field or on a, bare surface. The tree stores the water so as to fit its own needs. Each tree does something very different. This has an entire chapter on forests. It is so interesting. And what I really love is the real connection between these systems. You're not going to have one without the other. When we kill the biology, we disturb the infiltration. He says that every tree, a big tree holds up to 10,000 gallons of water. And the main thing that most hydrologists really talk about, and the beaver is the nature's #1 hydrologist, they say, our water is flowing on hard surfaces, cities, asphalt, too fast out to the ocean. And once we've clear cut something and there's nothing growing, we are having just ineffective rainfall that is really, they now think, causing sea level rise. We have to slow it, spread it, and sink it. That's the motto of the ecological hydrology. That's everything they talk about when you go to class, when that's the part of the course I was taking. Slow it, sink it, spread it. That's what a forest does. The rain doesn't just fall even. They even know now that the water that comes off the trees has all this different biology and nutrients and is so nourishing to the plants because it came off the trees. So he did see that this study was done in 2020 through Oregon State University. They know for a fact, just what Matt told us, that the stream flows, this is after the forests have grown back, by the way, the plantation forests, not the bare ones. And it's years and years and years before we recover any capacity of carbon sequestration because of the compaction, the spraying, and the sterilization of the soil. Not to mention, the forests don't grow very good. I envision a time when we have a whole different way with our plantation forests of bringing animals in there. Silviculture is where we bring cows into the forest. And they maybe, instead of leaving it bare, they plant native plants for cover crops, so that thistles don't grow, because they're just opportunists, right? So maybe there's new ways of incorporating regenerative agriculture into forestry, so we aren't left with the only option being Roundup. So I just liked this quote. One's from a long, long time ago, and one's from very recent. Both Plato and Aristotle wrote about how deforestation leads to loss of water resources. And they even have gone on to say, and we leave a legacy of that for our future generations. I think it's no accident that we call these legacy forests. We are going to leave a legacy, every single one of us. We just get to look and see what it's going to be. So in 2020, this is straight from our from the hydrology reports that I reviewed yesterday. Both the summer stream flow deficit study and the Alsea watershed study, these are two separate studies, demonstrate that logging can cause significant and cumulative long-term reductions in seasonal stream flow in the Pacific Northwest. That's pretty generalized, but it's definitive, and they've known this for such a long time. So once again, we do not have to choose. Mike talked about it. I think it's super important that you know who your environmental candidates are. We have all these programs that are in the making. The DNR carbon program got stalled out, but it's back on, right, Mike?
It's gonna be the first bill I introduce in the Senate.
The Climate Commitment Act, we already have had some success. I will say honestly, we have a little trouble in Clallam County getting our commissioners on board. Our commissioners are stuck on money and jobs, and I get it. They got a budget crisis right now. So, they are, responsible for keeping everyone happy in this community. And they believe with all their hearts, at least two of them, that we gotta cut these forests in order to fulfill our needs. I'd like to point out to everyone that these parcels, whether it be the trust lands or the junior taxing districts, were decided in 1930 during the Depression. What happened was all the counties and the cities went bankrupt, and they said, we can't deal with anything. We're starving to death. You take our land. And at that time, the state said, okay, we'll take 25% and you'll get 75% when we cut them down. And then they assigned all the different things that they would go for. And back then, building a school in 1930 was really important. And they literally used that timber that they cut to build the school, right? Times have changed. Our basic services have changed. trust goes to the school building fund. You know, the junior taxing districts, I know when the Aldwell was sold for millions of dollars, it all went to most 95% of it went to Fire District 2, which when I looked on their budget, they had no knowledge that it was coming. They weren't broke, and it is the way we are distributing this money that is the problem. And Mike has alluded to that.
That's why the unitary trust is so important.
Unitary trust. We haven't got Steve on board with that yet. He thinks that Clallam
No,
County
he
will
is.
suffer.
No, he is.
He told me Sunday, no, he thought it was a bad deal at our thing.
He told me yesterday.
Good, because I sent, good.
You may not, you guys,
I
may not have
I
been.
said, really? I don't know about that. You know, there's plenty of money. So here, this was our Oval Rally, and I just want to point out, this rally, the loggers came. Even the loggers came to one of my first presentations here, sat in the back row, and afterwards we had a little bit of a conversation, and they agreed with me, compaction is a problem. Spraying is a problem. They're trying to buy lighter equipment, you know, and I even said to one of the guys who at this rally revved his engine, started his chainsaw, was super obstructive to our peaceful little rally. I had talked with him after the program, and I said, you know what, we know better. We can do better. And he said, I agree. So, you know, the conversation about jobs were taken away by the machines.
You got a message from Steve. I said unitary trust, yay or nay? He says yay.
He said maybe that day about the road trip. So good job, Mike. So I just love this chart, and I brought this to our county commissioners as I was very irritated because their shtick, Clallam County is really easy to read because it's on the very top, was that we were causing all these problems in the flow of money to Clallam County by our pausing of these timber sales. How dare us? And I said, well, that's funny, because it all happened in 2023, where the timber revenue in Clallam County was essentially doubled, was it not? No, didn't get any response to that on my public comment. Nobody cared. When you look at our revenue, we are amongst the highest in the state. There's like hardly anybody that comes close. And this 2024 is only 6 months. They haven't produced their third quarter results yet. So the problem is not the revenue. The problem is the distribution of the revenue. The problem is over 50% of our timberlands are owned by hedge funds and the timber industry. So Mike's idea, I have been saying for years, how can we get them to stop exporting? And the burden, so the problem that our commissioners and the DNR and all the people about jobs say is the burden of all the local jobs is placed upon these DNR public lands. So we hope that can change. We know we got the right people coming into office to do that, and I just want to say thank you to you all, and I'll take any questions.
Could I say something?
Please say something. You got to step up here.
Well, my name's Ron Richards, and I'm a candidate for Charter Review Commission, but that's not why I'm here. I want to say one thing. As a former Clallam County Commissioner, I think Mike will back this up. The Clallam County Commissioners right now don't have a budget crisis. If you read the headlines 2 or 3 months ago, they had this huge deficit. But by magic, the county administrator just happened to solve it. And now it's almost down to 0. So when you read those first stories about budget problems, take it with a grain of salt, because they always figure it out. They have reduced the reserves significantly from where it was when I left and when Mike left, and that is a little problem. But currently, they're going to manage their budget. So Mike French can't argue too strongly that the budget problem is keeping him from saving his legs, of course. Fire districts can maybe, but they need to save up the Grove and Chris Wright told me in my chat. Help solve that instead of. But what I wanted to say, I'm the chair of State Law Commission. We too have sued the Department of Natural Resources. we won one case in Jefferson County, where the former judge decided that the DNR needed to follow the environmental impact statement in an individual log sale. They need to do a secret review in an individual log sale. But they went ahead and logged it before we could get an injunction.
Yeah.
We now have a case in King County, it's over the Wishbone timber sale, where Dave Upthegrove got the King County Council to pressure Hillary Franz into agreeing not to log the timber sale while our appeal was pending. We had a wonderful judge in King County named Christine Bellinger. Hopefully one of these days she runs for Supreme Court. But she decided the case in our favor. Essentially our argument was that in an individual timber sale, the DNR needs to consider the exact things that Wendy was talking about here. Their response was, no, we don't have to do that because we've done this overall study. And our DNR-owned properties sequester more carbon than than the log sales emit. You know, maybe 1% more, but they have these fake studies that said that, and that was their rationalization to say they didn't have to study the individual log sales. But we won the trial decision. The DNR appealed that, and I'm glad they did, because now we'll maybe get some good case law telling them that they need to do this on each individual's timber sale. And only by doing that on the individual timber sales will they really get down to the nitty-gritty of all these little impacts that Wendy Gray has been talking about. Really important stuff. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that. Our brief, even though we won the trial, court decision, because of a quirk in the King County rules, procedures, local rules, we have to file the first appeal brief, and that's due on November 20th. And, you know, we might have a decision in 3 or 4 months out of the Court of Appeals.
Thank you. Keep us posted. We'll put it on our. Go ahead.
So these are, this shows income from timber sales. Are these numbers, are they representative of the value of what's being sold? I mean, is the money being collected, pennies on the dollar, for these resources that are being sold? They're selling this wood, and if they're selling things for 2% of the value of the resources, why aren't the prices increased so that the income can drive the need for the money without wiping out entire large tracts of forest?
Well, I think it fixed that and answer my question. So the way the auctions work, I mean, so they're auctioning out the forest, right? So they have a public auction, and timber companies bid on that. And so oftentimes they set a bid value, like you can actually, all this is public on their website, you can see how much they're gonna sell it for. And then it often goes for more than what they project, you know, in their sales. And so, you know, as they're supposed to be managing, like, and I don't think we explained this at all, but DNR manages assets for the trust, right? And so they're supposed to be managing these lands to generate revenue. But I think part of the answer to your question is that they don't have to be logging to generate revenue. And I think Wendy just covered that in her presentation. So you can get revenue through other ways, right? Representative Chapman mentioned the National Climate Solutions Funds, right? The Climate Commitment Act. So they don't have to be logging. You can participate in carbon markets. And then of course there's other ways to actually fund. You know, if you want to peel back the layers and look at what is actually happening here and why, the Washington Constitution is kind of messed up concept to put a layer of extraction on these forests, right? Why are we even looking at a document that says extract these forests when at that time there was not awareness of what the state we'd be in today, right? And so a lot of I do these like timber sale deals, but a lot of my work is actually around reforming the whole system and coming up with these new laws and innovative ways to steward the entire watershed and really looking at it as a whole system. So I know that directly answered your question, but they are obligated to put the sales out for bid, and that's represented.
But they often, in these really unreachable forests, they literally give give the timber companies credits and reductions to build their roads. Because they whine, well, we're gonna have to build all these logging roads, and that's gonna cost us way too much. And so then the reduction of the timber value is to offset their cost of, building the roads. So it's convoluted.
I was gonna say, like, another thing I think your question brings up is like, we're not actually properly valuing the value of these
That's what I'm
forests.
saying.
And I think that's really what your question goes to, is like, the value of these forests left standing is worth way more, to our
And
economy.
they're publicly owned, so
Exactly.
they're ours.
And
they are.
yeah,
I wouldn't
yeah.
sell something that I thought was valuable for pennies, because that's.
And valuable to our future generations.
Right, right.
I think that our grandchildren are gonna be furious when they don't have any water, when they don't have a forest. I mean,
I want to address, because this is a really good question, because DNR essentially is a state broker for timber interests. Okay, that's what it is. It takes a 20 or 25% cut off the top. Now, we're trying to save a sale that's 22 miles west of Port Angeles. It's a temperate west coast rainforest.
Lowland.
Rainforest in the Sadie, Twin Creek area drainage. Beautiful forest. We're talking 60-inch DBH on Sitka spruce, man. This stuff is old. Hadn't been cut since the early 1900s. So it's getting there. And you know why they want that Sitka spruce? Because there's nothing left. Because all the plantation forests that they send, like Mike said, to China and come back as pallets or crates from their plantation forests, because DNR isn't allowed technically to export, right? So these guys are looking at these big Sitka spruce, big Doug firs, and big hemlocks, because it's a hemlock, Sitka spruce dominant rainforest, been there 100-some years. Anyway, they want those because the money. And that's why they're targeting legacy forests, because they overcut their stuff in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and now they want the stuff that's left over.
Well, it's even worse than that, because every $100,000 worth of house, you have $200,000 worth of interest. And that has reached skyrocketing levels, so people can't afford it. So you need to shove down that $100,000. You need to make that as cheap as possible. So the hedge funds would be happy to buy this stuff and sell it at a loss, because the bucks is to be made on the interest side. And the thing that people don't realize, I think it was around 81, the Federal Reserve changed the law. Houses are not, primary purpose of a house is not to be lived in. They changed it. Remember, this is a private corporation, and they run the show. 81, the primary purpose of a house is as a financial instrument. It's not to be lived in. It used to be.
That's why we have the lowest rate of home ownership per capita in America since the 1950s. And I'm certain that would follow.
So you just think of it. So wood, and that $100,000, all the stuff that goes into that house. What is the financial industry doing where they are charging twice as much as the entire, all the work to make that house? And so until people stand up against that machinery, the Federal Reserve, we're going to continue to have this, and
Devaluing.
it's going to get far worse.
Well, these are our state managed lands, and we're here as a movement.
One of the things, though, getting back to this, and I'm not trying to minimize that, is that Weyerhaeuser, Sierra Pacific, the big people that are bankrolling the opposition for the lands commissioner, they are not wood companies anymore. They are timber investment management organizations, TIMOs, like Green Crow was, is. And Weyerhaeuser is an REIT, Real Estate Investment Trust, or TIMO. Well, their profit and loss is based on cuts. 30 to 40 years is the maximum return on investment. So share values is driving these cuts. And these legacy forests, they are pearls, folks. And they want them.
And the equipment nowadays, there is a series of articles, a week and a half ago in the Seattle Times, started on Sunday, ended on Wednesday. And the very first day was about the man who goes out and estimates how much a forest is worth. What's that? I forget what they're called. Does anyone remember? What? Cruisers, timber cruisers. And, now when those big machines that you saw harvesting the forest, they literally, the minute they grab that tree, they know exactly how much it's worth. It goes into the computer, it's all sorted, and, they know exactly how much money they're gonna make before that tree is even trucked out of the site. So, you know, there's a lot of investment. The one thing I'd like to point out is the DNR keeps saying, but we already did all of our research on these. We've invested so much money, you know, tagging the trees and doing our hard work to make sure that these were forests that should be logged. When in actuality, we have been telling them for years that they shouldn't be doing this. They're the ones wasting their own money. And then saying that we couldn't possibly not sell it, not auction it now because we've invested so much. When we have been saying that they have made an agreement in 1997 to set aside 10 to 15% of older mature forests to reach our mature forest goal for 2090. And their theory is we're gonna cut these down and we're still gonna reach our goal. They're not gonna reach their goal. Everyone knows it. Well, their big scam is they're not leaving 10 to 15% on any of these parcels. And they're trying to include the riparian buffer. That's the little strip they leave next to the creek. And you know, with the temperatures rising, you know, bare soil is hot. Salmon are dependent on cool streams and cool temperatures. So the bottom line is they're bringing all of this propaganda about we've spent so much money preparing this timber sale, full knowing that these are the last of we will not reach the 10 or 15% goal. Even if we save all these forests, we will not reach that 10 to 15%. And they're not saying that it's mandated. It was an agreement in the forest plan.
So I think, yeah, and I think just one last thing, I know people need to go, but, yeah, I mean, I think what we have is, what we can do in the LL watershed, and as Peter mentioned, I mean, we also work on trying to protect these like sea forests and other locations all around the peninsula. There's some incredible forests, and but what we can think of is a different way, right? This could actually be a pilot of a different way of stewarding our forests in this watershed. And I'm just going to read just a tiny bit, not like 30 seconds from this petition, not the whole thing, that the Lower Elwha citizens are sharing that you can sign on to. It starts with, and this is to Commissioner Franz. We come together to fulfill our sacred responsibility to care for the natural world, united in our commitment to protect the Elwha watershed and all our ancient and mature forests from the imminent threat of logging. We as Indigenous peoples have known since time immemorial that these forests are not mere resources, but relatives, elders, and teachers, offering wisdom and guidance. The Elwha watershed is an interconnected web of life, a cultural and spiritual home, sustaining the salmon, the orcas, and all of us. And then it closes with saying, together we call for the protection of the Elwha watershed as a commitment to our mutual future and to the well-being of all who depend upon it. We ask that you stop these planned timber sales and heed our call to be guided by principles of respect and reciprocity in caring for the watershed. So let that be the vision that guides us as we move forward. And we have all this legal stuff and documents and talk about all this, but that's the vision we want to hold in our mind and our heart. So thank you all for coming, and please sign up for your list.
If you folks want to sign the petition that she just read, be signatory right here.
I'd like to mention that on the lower BS, the tribe cuts unregulated as much as they want. There's about 10 acres down the lower Elwha right now that's a bare patch of dirt. They've cut multiple acres of legacy forests for their casinos, their housing projects, and whatever else they want, unregulated by the state because they're a sovereign nation. So that part is a lot of propaganda, along with a machine can only cut up to 3 feet. It doesn't measure, it just cuts. That's all done at the scaling station once they're all out. There's a lot of propaganda in this meeting, a lot of fear factor. Didn't touch on forest fires at all. Most of the peninsula at one point in time is burned to the ground. Old growth forest. It's all what they call now again legacy forest or whatever. The Forest Service manages it. These are state timber sales and highly regulated. They're talking about warehousing and rain and all that as a fear tactic. That's completely wrong. The state does not cut old growth. That's banned for cutting. Private timber maybe. But everything you see out here on the peninsula is green now, 1 month law. That's what we're doing for us. There's a lot of this total propaganda that's people into the research is all blown fear-based. Once the trees are gone, it's gone for good, and that's total crap. So, yeah, this needs to be a little bit more researched. Over and out on that. Everyone wants to watch this tour.